Hey everybody, my name is John Devine. I'm the executive sports editor here at the Miami Herald. And with me is Anthony Chang, our Heat beat writer. We're going to be coming to you this season with a couple of surprises here and there, I'm sure. But I'd like to thank you for having me on here. This is his show. I'm just here to move things along. So, hey Anthony, it's nice to see us here where we could actually see each other face to face.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun, JD. I'm excited to do this season with you. Gonna do it every week. Gonna try to do it every week. To post late in the week. And yeah, really excited to get started.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, Anthony is over there in the Bahamas. Poor guy.
Somebody has to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. But before he went to the Bahamas, he was here for Media Day. And, we'd like to get a little idea of what Media Day was like, get an idea. First and foremost, I know all off-season people were like, hey, there were no changes made. There were no changes made. Heat always pleads patience and stability. And I guess in this case, health. And they think they can still stack up. And I guess the biggest complaint they had last year is they just weren't healthy. So what did you hear in Media Day? Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's not a huge surprise because that's been the talking point all offseason, starting when Pat Riley set the agenda with player availability and kind of that challenging his team to be more available for more games, including Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, just up and down the roster. And we got the same message. I think that was the biggest point made during Media Day is the Heat still believe, despite playing in the play-in tournament the last 2 years and being eliminated in the first round last year, that they can compete with the East Best when they're healthy. So we're going to see, but they believe a core of Bam, Jimmy, those two as a leading men, and then Tyler and Terry, that core with the supporting pieces around them is good enough to compete with Boston, with Philly, with Paul George now and Caleb Martin, with Milwaukee, the Knicks, very talented starting five after getting Karl-Anthony Towns and OG. So that was interesting. Not a huge surprise, but just them doubling down on that. So health is going to be, I think that's what they see as their biggest free agent acquisition this year is improved health. Will it happen? Only time will tell. But you could tell that's kind of the message they're using as they begin camp.
Well, it's funny you should mention Terry Rozier because I guess that's the wild card. And if I'm not mistaken, they always talked about, hey, this is our major free agent acquisition because we gave up, what did they give up, a first-round pick last year for him?
A first-round pick and Kyle Lowry. And first-round picks are very valuable these days, as everyone knows.
And Kyle Lowry was valuable because of his contract.
Expiring salary. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, I guess we kind of got to see what he could bring as another scoring option. But how is he looking so far? Is he going to be ready for the start of the season? And do they seem a little undersized in the backcourt?
Yeah, it's interesting you point that out because that has been a question that we've asked the first few days of, can a Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier backcourt really work? Because that's a pretty small backcourt. But going back to Terry, seems to be healthy, no limitations. Doctors have told him he doesn't have to worry about the neck moving forward. So that's good news. And the Heat are relatively healthy. To go back to the first point, that's a good sign too, because there were lingering injuries from the offseason, not only Terry, but Nikola Jovic, Drew Smith with his knee last year missed most of the season. The only player that's being limited so far in the first few days of camp is Josh Richardson, who has been on the court doing stuff. He's just not full go yet. And the hope is that he might not be ready for the start of the season, but close to it. He had shoulder surgery in March, I believe. So it's been almost 7 months or so. So he's getting closer, but he's the one that at this point might not be ready for the start of the season. But the rest of the roster, if nothing happens here in the next few weeks, should be ready. So that's a good sign for the Heat. And then to go back to your point about Terry and Tyler, one major takeaway from me today was Eric Spoelstra saying that he's going to be very intentional to put Terry, Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam on the court together because he wants to see what those four guys can do. It seems like they haven't officially announced it, but it seems like those four will be in the starting lineup. We'll see who the fifth guy is, Nikola Jovic, Haywood Highsmith, a power forward is going to round out that group. But the Heat want to see those four play together in the preseason and in practice. They only played 10 games together, under 200 minutes together, so not much court time after Terry was acquired because of all the injuries. So the Heat are banking that those four can really produce positive minutes.
What does a Terry Rozier? What does he bring that they don't necessarily have? Because to the offensive mix and the defensive mix, for that matter.
Yeah, he's a guy that can get to the rim. He's not the best finisher around the basket, so that's an issue. But he can get to the rim, which is important because the Heat were among the worst. Cancel this.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you had started to record, so I got distracted. You guys started it, right?
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we'll stop. You ready?
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so thanks for that information on Terry Rozier, but let's go a little deeper. And I would like to know, and I'm sure Heat fans would like to be reminded, what does Terry Rozier bring to that offense that they don't necessarily have without him?
Yeah, I think the number one skill is his ability to get to the basket and penetrate into the paint, which the Heat need. They were among the worst teams as far as generating shots around the rim, which is a big issue. It's one of the biggest reasons why their offense was among the worst in the league the last 2 years is they just don't take enough shots around the basket. It seems simple, but that's the bottom line. They're just not an efficient offense because they take so many long twos and mid-range shots. The hope is that Terry can kind of take away some of those mid-range shots and add more shots in the restricted area. He's not the best finisher on the basket, but the fact that he can get there is a positive, that he can draw fouls and get easy points at the free throw line. And also, if he can attract multiple defenders by getting to the basket, theoretically should leave somebody else open for a three, which is another shot that, another thing that he want to take more threes. So I would say his dribble penetration and his shot creation too is important because he can also, his step backs, his ability to score. We saw it a little bit last year, even in the short time he was healthy for the Heat. Ability to score late in the shot clock when things don't look like they're going well. He's a good on one-on-one situation. So offensively is the biggest thing. Defensively, is he the best defender in the NBA? No, but he has some length. He plays bigger than he is. I mean, I think he has a 6'7", 6'8" wingspan for like a 6'2", 6'3" guard. So he has some length, which is important because, like you alluded to, a Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier backcourt is not the biggest in the league. And the fact that Terry has a longer wingspan and can maybe guard a little bit up is important.
Okay, so answer me this. Looking at that team, top to bottom, with the projected 15, who on that team can go get their own shot?
Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler. And it's funny, Alec Burks. Alec Burks, who is a journeyman scorer, could really is a bucket getter. And I guess I would say Jaime Jaquez too. He showed that ability as well in the post to operate in the mid post and create his own shot. But really, you're talking about that core four of Bam, Jimmy, Tyler, and Terry.
Okay, so whoever would be the fifth person to go with them, in theory,
be a three-point shooter,
freed up for shots.
Yeah, and I think they want to, because there are so many shot creators in that lineup, which could be an issue, and that's been a question too. Is that the right mix, right? The Heat are going to try to make it work because again, those are the four best players in the team. You want your four best players playing on the court together most of the time, so they're going to try to make it work. But in order for it to work, and I talked to Tyler about this for Storm and Right later in the week, they're asking Tyler to be more of a spot-up shooter and play less maybe with the ball in his hands and on the ball. And he's been one of the best spot-up three-point shooters in the NBA the last few seasons. So theoretically, it should be a role he should be good at. Shot 40% on spot-up threes last year. So the challenge is going to be him making that adjustment of going with his instinct of trying to just dribble the ball and get past the defender and take a fadeaway, and maybe more now just playing off the ball and letting the pass come to him and taking the shot that way. So that's going to be an adjustment that they're going to try to make this all work because, again, like you said, there are four guys who probably are best with the ball in their hands, and that's not great.
Okay. If I had to ask your opinion, and I know training camps just started, so they're figuring out these pieces, who, in your opinion, would be the best person to group with those four? And do you think all four should be on there together? I mean, I know that substitutions are going to come in and out.
Yeah.
Maybe that's your closing lineup.
Right.
But who do you think would be the best fit with those four, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think the top two candidates are probably Nikola Jovic and Haywood Highsmith. And I think at this point, I would play Haywood Highsmith at the 4 only because, and not just offensively, because you could argue Nikola Jovic is better offensively than Haywood Highsmith, and you'd probably be right. But Haywood Highsmith on defense, I think they're going to need that because, like we've been saying, Tyler and Terry is a small backcourt. Their teams are going to try to take advantage of that. You need another good defender other than Bam, and Jimmy at his age can't defend at a high level every single possession of a 48-minute game. So really, it's just Bam out there trying to make things work on the defensive end. I think Haywood Highsmith, who I believe is an all NBA defensive caliber player, I think he would be a good fit there because he and Bam could help create havoc on the defensive end and provide some size that they need and length that they need on defense. So I would go with Haywood Highsmith. But again, he's not the best probably offensive option, but for defense, I think he would make sense.
I guess then that would just skip my next question about what about Robinson, because
Duncan, I don't think you could play Duncan together with Terry and Tyler for extended minutes. I just don't think that's going to be a successful trio for most games, most nights in today's NBA, where there's so much isolation and guys are hunting for matchup advantages. There's just too many defensive, I don't want to say liabilities, but just not plus defenders on the floor with those three. Duncan and Tyler, we've seen some of that in the last few years, and that seems to work, but you're going to have to surround them with Bam, Haywood Highsmith, like 3 really good defenders to balance the lineup, I wouldn't think, and I think it'd be a smaller group too. If you have Terry, Tyler, Duncan, Jimmy, and Bam, I think it would be too small in today's NBA.
Funny you should mention size, because I think for the first time in a while, they have 3 guys with size that may actually get to contribute. And that would be Jokic. I always say it wrong.
Jovic.
That'd be Jovic. That would be Bam.
By the way, I do control, every time I write Jovic, I do Control F and make sure I'm not writing Jokic because that's an instinct.
I'm waiting for that date. And as the editor, I am always looking on my side going, please tell me he has it right.
Yeah.
So, but then you also have the first round pick.
Right.
And that can cover a lot of space in a short amount of time. Do you see any times during the course of the year where Spo experiments with trying to put a couple of them on the floor at the same time? I don't know if he really had the option before, but depending on development, maybe he has a shot at doing that and clogging up that lane a little bit. And can they go outside and actually, because with the 3-point game today, you just can't sit there in the box and just can't.
Yeah. I think this year, we've been saying every year, is Bam going to play more as a power forward this year? Can he play in a double big lineup? And it usually never really happens other than a few minutes here and there. But I think they have the personnel this year to do it with Khalil Ware, who's a 7-footer who can block shots and also has the potential to make threes. But then you throw into the fact that Bam started taking and making threes late last season. So he himself is probably going to take more threes this year too. So just the combination of the addition of Ware and now Bam shooting threes and shooting them pretty well on the final couple months of last season, I think we're going to see more of that. I don't think they're going to use a starting lineup with 2 bigs.
Right.
But I think for certain matchups, for certain situations, I think we could see a Bam and Khalil Ware combination. Maybe a Bam Kevin Love combination. Well, yeah, Kevin Love's not a natural big.
Forgot.
Yeah, he's not a traditional big, but he shoots threes. He's a really good rebounder. Gives you some size. So they have different options to go in that direction if needed. And I think Eric Spoelstra is going to use that a little bit more this year. And you saw Bam with, I know they don't have Anthony Davis, but you saw him with Team USA, Bam playing with Anthony Davis. Those are really, really effective lineups. And you saw Bam play really well in that role. So, again, they don't have Anthony Davis on the roster, but Khalil Ware, kind of in the mold of an Anthony Davis.
Right.
So there's some potential there.
I do think this is more size than they've had since Bam has emerged as, at least at a minimum, a starter, but one of the better big men in the NBA. So it would be good to get him some help.
For sure.
We talked all around the rest of the roster and everything, but there's still one big personality that looms over everything, and that is Jimmy Butler and that is the fact that, we're talking about what the contract situation may be, the offseason. We know he arrived late, but there was a reason for that. So please explain that. It wasn't, I don't think he showed up just to pout. I don't think it's a repeat of Minnesota. But what are your impressions that you've seen of Jimmy since he's been back?
Yeah, he said all the right things. And that's a positive, right? Because we were all wondering, we hadn't spoken to him all offseason since he got hurt in Philadelphia in the play-in game, I think in mid-April, late April. He hasn't spoken. There's been all this noise about the contract extension, Pat Riley challenging him to play more games, Pat Riley telling him to shut his mouth. Then it came out that Jimmy didn't want the contract extension. He wants to potentially just use his player option next year and become a free agent and see what else is out there. So there's been so much noise. Not a great start. Jimmy comes late to media day, right? That's not ideal. There was a reason for that. He was in Paris for a company that he endorses, had an event over there. Kind of didn't leave much room for error for him to get back in time. So it was close. And it just so happened there were issues with his flight. So he ended up showing up like a few hours late, getting there, landing in Miami around 1:30. He spoke to media as soon as he got to the arena. You could tell how frazzled and how tired he was. He said he had something planned for media day. I don't know what it was going to be, but he couldn't do it because he had just got off a plane. But the bigger and most important thing is that he basically said, look, I'm here to play basketball. I want to be available for as many games as I can. I understand what Pat was saying. I respect it. And our own Barry Jackson asked him about Pat's comment about shut your mouth. Did that bother him? Jimmy said, no, nothing really bothers me anymore. I get what he's saying, and I'm moving forward. So he said all the right things, which is good. Now we're going to see in the coming weeks, coming months, if he really means it, right? Is he going to be available for 70-plus games this year? Is he going to take back-to-backs off? Is he going to take random games off? Is he going to be more engaged? Is he going to be the all-NBA version of Jimmy Butler that we saw a few years ago? That is still to be determined. But it's off to a really good start that he at least said the right things on Monday.
What was the quote? No shenanigans? No shenanigans?
No shenanigans. I'm just here to play ball, I think what it was. So that's good.
Okay, well, I'm asking one wild card. God forbid the Heat gets off to the kind of start the Dolphins are off to right now, where it looks like, and I know the Heat as an organization has no quit in them, but if it looks like there's that they're not going to make the playoffs and you're around the trade deadline, do you trade Jimmy?
I think you at least have to consider it. I think you'd have to. I mean, you wouldn't be doing your job, right, if you didn't at least do your due diligence to see what you could get for him. If you're 5-6 games under 500, again, like in that 8th place range, you know that Jimmy can become a free agent next summer. Or even, it might be even worse in their eyes, let's say, if he opts in and takes the $52 million salary, right, if he's not playing well this year. Right. That's not great either for the Heat. So I think if things aren't going well, I think you have to at least consider it. I would definitely not rule it out. But the Heat's hope is they stay healthy, they're in that top 4 range, they're better than people think, and they figure it out next offseason and see what happens and let this year play out. But yeah, if they start off slow and you get to December, January, and you're below 500, I think you definitely have to consider it.
Okay. So I'm not going to put you in a bad spot. But outside of the Heat, so people who are listening and watching, this does not include the Heat. So don't go, oh, no, Anthony said this. Outside of the Heat, who are the top 4 in the East?
Top 4 in the East? I think it's pretty clear. I think it's a pretty clear-cut top 4 right now, based on paper. Boston, New York. There's no particular order, but Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. I think those are the top 4 in the East.
Okay, so does Boston, I'm trying to think, do they have any injuries or any lag?
I don't think so. And they pretty much brought everybody back from a team that was the best team in the league all season last year.
Okay, so Boston's running it back. New York has some new pieces to fit in.
Yeah.
Some of those pieces sometimes get a little injured too, so health can play there.
Yeah.
Philadelphia has PG, well, I guess he's not PG-13 because he changed his number. Yeah. But you have him. That's not always the healthiest team if you put him with Joel Embiid. And then you have Milwaukee, who, yes, I think we kind of put him top 4 by default, but What have they really added since? I mean,
Yeah, no, that's
once
a
they lost
Milwaukee's the
Holiday.
team. Milwaukee's the team for sure that could go south, I would say, because
Okay.
they lost a couple pieces. They really didn't make any big additions. They added Gary Trent Jr. on a minimum, which is a good signing, good scorer off the bench. But yeah, it's a team pretty much led by Giannis and Dame, which is a good duo to have right at the top of your roster. But is Brook Lopez a player he was? Chris Middleton, is he going to stay healthy? So there are question marks with Milwaukee. I put them in the top 4 only because they have Giannis and Damian Lillard. But yeah, would I be shocked if maybe they're not as good as we think, just like last year? Probably not.
Do you think there's any young team that'll make the next step?
Like
in Orlando?
Orlando's the first team that comes to mind, right? I think Orlando adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with the young core that they have, you saw how good of they weren't a great offensive team, but they were very good defensively. They would grind their way to wins. They won the division last year. So yeah, I think they're a team to keep an eye on as an up-and-coming team that now just added a 3-and-D veteran that just won a championship a few years ago in KCP. So yeah, they're in that next tier, I think, Orlando with like the Heat, Cleveland, Indiana. I think the Heat of all those teams, because of the experience of their core and how long they've been together, and we've seen them make deep runs in the playoffs, I think the Heat have the highest ceiling if they can stay healthy. But that's a big question mark. It's like same thing with the Dolphins. You're hoping the Dolphins can stay healthy. It hasn't happened. The Heat hopes that they have better luck once the year starts.
Well, we can't pin all our hope on the Panthers winning all the time. We need a little variety down here.
Yeah, we have the Canes right now.
Okay. So last thing, any training camp takeaways before we finish off this one? I know it's only been 2 days. I know they just started down there in the Bahamas. But is there anything that stands out that you're seeing that you didn't expect to see?
Vibes are good. I think that's maybe some people think that means anything, but I think for a team that's entering year 6 of this pretty much same core, you get scared that things could get pretty stale. But guys seem energized. I don't know if it was a long off season. Guys are enjoying spending time with each other. We saw Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler on Instagram yesterday playing dominoes in Bahamas together. I think the vibes are good, which is a good sign, and that they're healthy. Like I've been surprised. We can't really watch all of practice, but we're let in the last 10 minutes or so. And seeing Josh Richardson on the court doing some stuff, it's been encouraging. So they're healthy. So I think those have been my 2 biggest takeaways. It's only been 2 days, but yeah, so far so good.
Okay, so last question is: the Heat always finds a diamond in the rough. A diamond in the rough. Looking out, let's keep an eye out and just let me know who you think that diamond's going to be going into this year.
My guess is going to be Keshad Johnson.
Okay.
The undrafted rookie from Arizona. Just perfect Heat type player. Gritty, tough, 3-and-D guy, mature. Kind of reminds you different games, but it just kind of reminds you his demeanor of Udonis Haslem. Just fits right in. I don't know if he's going to play right away. Probably not. But I think he's a guy to keep an eye on that could eventually develop into one of the Heat's next undrafted success stories.
Okay. That's a good spot for us. So join us each week. We will be here. We'll bring content. We'll try not to have any extra special guests in the background.
I like the sword, though. That was fun.
Yes. Oh, sorry. That's a lightsaber. My bad.
Lightsaber, sorry.
But yes, hopefully the Heat grows faster than this one does back here. And we are looking forward to good news throughout the year. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe. We will be here on YouTube. You will see us on video each week. So I'm John Devine. This is Anthony Chang. Thank you. And you guys we hope we have a great season.
Thanks, everybody.